Hi, Misha here. I've done a number of videos on British helicopters of the RAF and Royal Navy, including this guy here. This is the Westland Whirlwind, which was a license-produced version of the Sikorsky H-19. This is a 1/72 scale model from Corgi. And I wanted to talk about actually a slightly earlier British chopper. This is the Bristol Sycamore. And this is a model from Altaya, 1/72 scale, also die-cast. And actually the Sycamore predates the Whirlwind and is a native British design. This really dates back to World War II. During that war, of course, there were lots of advancements in power plants and aviation and gyrocopters, which led to helicopters. And an early British, or at least pioneer in Britain, was Raoul Hafner, who worked in the 1943 time period. But 1944, especially after D-Day, there was a need felt for a rotor aircraft. Gliders had been used quite successfully, but they wanted to have more powered, more options. So that summer, Bristol Aircraft set up a separate, semi-autonomous helicopter subdivision. And they actually purchased Hafner's small company, folding it into their own helicopter division, and put him in charge of their development program. And so work began on a 4-seat pilot, co-pilot, and 2-passenger multi-purpose kind of light transport, battlefield, cargo, freight chopper. And early on they would use the Pratt & Whitney Wasp engine because that's just what Bristol had available. And to that end, the prototype would fly on July 25th of 1947, so a little after World War II. And it was designed from the outset for both military and civilian commercial markets. The third prototype was actually as it was called, Sycamore, named after the tree. We actually had the little sycamore, and we even called them helicopters, the little seeds. But yeah, the original prototype and the second prototype were known as the Mark I. The Mark II came about with the third prototype in 1948. And this was the first to use a more powerful Alvis piston engine. And then in April of 1949, this actually became the first helicopter to receive an airworthy certification from the British government, meaning it was open for sale. A short time later, the Royal Navy and RAF began testing it. The Royal Navy would start deck landing tests in 1951, and the RAF would adopt it as the HR-14 or HC.4 for the standard version, although there were other variations. And the first of these were put into operational service in April of 1953. So really they didn't make it in time for Korea. But an early place they were used was in the Malayan emergency. And, yeah, They would basically be used to transport troops right into the jungles, right up to the front lines. And when Bristol was designing this, they wanted to make a helicopter that was dependable, that could fly without a lot of maintenance. They really were focused on that reliability, dependability. The Mark II, of course, would give way to the Mark III, which would have a slightly wider cabin, able to seat 3 in the back, plus the pilot and co-pilot in the front. And then the Mark IV would kind of be the definitive version, which would standardize a lot of the features, the seating, the doors, all that. And this would actually be what would be adopted primarily by the RAF and Royal Navy. It was designed to be easily convertible to fulfill many roles, including, as I said, cargo transport. It could carry up to 1,000 pounds, which was actually pretty good for a first-generation helicopter. It could also be observation reconnaissance. There was a version that was designed for anti-submarine, or at least submarine detection. And, of course, as many early helicopters, it could be used as an air ambulance. Interestingly, it could carry 2 stretchers, but it carried them internally. It did not carry them in the little capsules on the outside like American helicopters and even Russian would be doing in the 50s. And these were also used for civilian applications, like as a crane, a lift, and just generally used for observation and surveying during construction. This model here is actually after one used in 1956 during the Suez Crisis, where it was flying as a joint operational squadron off of HMS Ocean. And of course these flew support in that event. And while this was a very good aircraft for its day, by 1958 it was becoming outdated as newer turbine engine helicopters were coming into vogue, so the production line was shut down in 1959 with around 180 of these produced. They would remain in RAF and Royal Navy, but primarily RAF service through the 1960s. But it, excuse me, as the airframes accrued more and more hours, by 1970s they were just outdated, and at the end of their service life, and with spare parts and the production line gone, these were pretty much all retired out by 1971, at least in Britain. They were used by a few other nations, including West Germany and Canada and Australia, but it was still mostly a British aircraft. Comparing it to the Westland, this too used an Alvis engine, but it delivered more horsepower, giving it more lift. But actually this was a slower chopper. It could do about 110 miles per hour max, whereas the Sycamore could get up to about 130 miles per hour. But again, it had less lift capability and a less powerful engine. And since it had already been upgraded a couple of times during its prototypical stage, it was pretty much at the max of what the airframe was capable of. Therefore, that was kind of the career of the Sycamore. As far as a model, of course the Corgi is better, more metal, has an opening side door, pilot figures, of course rotating, and the wheels also move. The Altaya, you do get rotating propellers, but no moving wheels or doors. They both come with a stand. Of course, the Altaya is half the price of the Corgi. This is a $35 model, The Corgi is a $50, $60, $70 model, so I think these are actually pretty good little values. They're kind of based on the old IXO tooling, and a lot like a Mercom, but just made a little bit better quality. Mostly a little more durable. Also, the rotors attach a little better, and the stand is a lot better. So I've kind of become really, not enamored, but very pleased with the Mercom and the Altaya for the money in the helicopter line, simply because beggars can't be choosers, and there are not many choppers available. But of the two, when I get a chance, I will always go for the Altaya. It's worth the extra money to me. But of course, when given the chance, when Corgi does one, assuming it's not $100 because it's out of production, I will always go for the Corgi. So it just kind of goes to show you. But yeah, I've done so many other British chopper videos, I figured might as well do this one. If you have any questions or comments, please do leave them below. And if you could, like, share, and subscribe. This is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon next time.